This video lecture has been produced using artificial intelligence with the supervision of Belhaven faculty. So today, we're going to dive into what really makes group counseling work. And here's a hint. It's not magic. It's not about just throwing a bunch of people into a room and hoping for the best. It's about intentional design. We're going to explore how truly effective groups are carefully built, step by step, through deliberate planning and thoughtful leadership.
We've broken our journey down into 4 main parts. First, we'll start with the blueprint, the foundational planning that has to happen before anyone even walks in the door. Then we'll shift our focus to the people themselves and look at key considerations for members. After that, we'll talk about strategies to make sure you get off to a really strong start. And finally, we'll unpack the dynamics that actually fuel real, lasting growth within the group.
By the end of our time together, you'll have a solid toolkit to build a group from scratch. You'll know how to create a solid plan, how to select the right members, and how to launch those first few crucial sessions with confidence. All right, let's jump right in.
This verse from Proverbs really is the perfect foundation for everything we're about to discuss. It frames the group process not as some passive meeting, but as this dynamic, active space where people challenge and refine one another. It's all about mutual growth and accountability.
Okay, first things first, foundational planning. I want you to think of this as the architectural blueprint for your group. Every single decision you make at this stage is going to have a ripple effect on the group's potential for success down the line. It's that important.
So this slide really lays out the 4 pillars of that blueprint. Number 1, purpose. It has to be crystal clear. What is this group actually trying to achieve? Number 2 is size. The sweet spot is usually around 6 to 10 members. That's small enough for real connection, but big enough for diverse perspectives. Then you have membership criteria to make sure there is some baseline of compatibility. And finally, a really thoughtful screening process to make sure every single member is truly ready for the work ahead. All right, so once we have that blueprint in place, we can turn our attention to the most critical component of all, the people. This brings us right into our second section, where we're going to focus on assembling just the right mix of individuals for the group.
Selecting members, it's a real balancing act. On one hand, you've got to align the group's purpose with what each individual person needs. But on the other hand, you want a good mix of perspectives. The trick is to find that balance while making sure you avoid what the source material calls harmful mismatches. Those combinations of people that could just create an unsafe or totally unproductive environment.
And that leads us to a really big decision about the group's makeup. As this slide shows so well, there's a trade-off here. Homogeneous groups, where members have pretty similar issues, they tend to create a strong sense of safety and focus really quickly. But then you have heterogeneous groups with all sorts of diverse backgrounds, and those are fantastic for sparking growth and constructive challenge. Which one is right? Well, it depends entirely on the group's purpose.
But listen, even if you get the mix just right, you still have to assess readiness. And readiness is way more than just someone saying, yeah, I'll do it. We have to dig deeper. Do they have the emotional stability for this kind of work right now? Are they genuinely willing to participate and be open to feedback? And this one's huge. Is the timing right in their life? Checking their readiness for change is absolutely a non-negotiable step.
Okay, the plan is set. The members are chosen. So, how do we actually launch this thing? Our third section covers the strategies you need for a strong start, with a laser focus on building a solid framework of trust and safety from the very first minute. This initial orientation phase is so foundational. The goal here is just to clarify everything: the group's purpose, its structure, what's expected of everyone. This is where introductions happen, where trust starts to take root, and maybe most importantly, where the leader works to normalize that anxiety that, let's be honest, pretty much everyone feels when they're starting something new.
A huge part of that orientation is laying down some clear ground rules. Think of these as the non-negotiables that create a safe container for everyone. This means strict confidentiality, a real commitment to respectful communication, clear expectations about attendance, and that tricky balance of encouraging people to be open while always respecting personal boundaries.
The group leader's role here is incredibly active. It's not passive at all. First, they have to model the very behavior they expect to see, things like authenticity and empathy. Second, they have to find that sweet spot, balancing support with gentle challenge. And third, they need to actively facilitate activities that start building that all-important group cohesion from day one.
So, why do we do all this prep work? What's the point of all this structure and planning? Well, that brings us to our final section, the dynamics of growth. We're shifting from the how to the why, and we're going to explore the powerful relational core that all this careful planning is meant to support.
When you boil it all down, group process is about relationships. Growth doesn't just happen in a vacuum, right? It happens when members can share their experiences and give each other honest, mutual feedback. They literally sharpen one another's awareness and build resilience together. The counselor's job is to create the space where that constructive challenge can happen safely, which brings us full circle to that idea of iron sharpens iron.
The concepts we've talked through today are drawn from the sources you see right here. I think the biggest takeaway is that powerful, life-changing groups are never an accident. They are intentionally built, piece by piece, from the ground up. And that really leads to one last thought to ponder. How does all this deliberate structure paradoxically create the very freedom that members need to achieve real, lasting change?